Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Money by Chris podcast. I'm Chris, and we talk about your money. I help people roll their 401ks into passive income in retirement. That's the kind of money that I manage every single day. And I help people that are in retirement or nearing retirement roll their 401k into passive income in retirement because that's what we need. When we retire, we don't earn a paycheck anymore from our employer. So we roll our 401k into passive income. That is the income we need that pays our bills. And by day, that's what I do. By night, I run this podcast talking about how I get it done for your entertainment and informative purposes. So, welcome to the podcast. I'm certainly glad to have you. Today, we're going to talk about something special. And this element, what I'm talking about today, is part of what is in my upcoming book. That my first book is going to be released this fall in 2026, and it is called The 21st Century Pension, modern day pension type income that we get by rolling over our 401k. So you'll be able to read the book and all about how we do that 401k type rollover, how we position our money for maximum benefit in retirement. But there is a chapter in there talking about this, and I want to talk about it on the podcast today because it affects many of us. It affects some of my clients who are in retirement, and it's near and dear to my heart because I am living it as well. And that is adult children living with us in our home in retirement. If you have adult children living with you in retirement, or if you feel like there are going to be some adult children living with you in retirement, you are not alone. This is a phenomenon. This is a living condition that will affect many people. Many people do it. And I want to talk about it maybe in a way that you might not be expecting. Here's why. I have a client, and she said, I have teenage children. She's not yet 50, she's about to turn 50, and she's got children in high school. Her intention is to send those kids off to college, but not all the way, because those kids that are going to college, she says, I want them to come home for summers and breaks during and weekends when they're not doing anything. They might be out of town, they might even be out of state. She hopes not. But I want them, they're still going to live here. Yeah, they're staying on campus or they're in a fraternity or a sorority house. Okay, I get that. But I'm talking about when school's not in session, they're going to come home because they live here. And during our planning for her retirement, I said, what about after college? What about after they graduate? And she said, well, I don't know. I talked with her a little bit, and she admitted that she would like for them to come and live at home after their graduation from college while they get a secure footing of adulthood underneath them, whether that's with a spouse or whether that's finding the right employer for the career path they've chosen, whatever that looks like. She says, I want them to do it here because this is the proper springboard to them securing the foundation for their own adult life. And when she said it with a little bit of not shame, but she felt like she needed to explain herself. She said, now I know this isn't popular, and I've had some friends and other family members discourage this, but here's how I'm feeling. And that caused me a bit of a pause when she was offering a disclaimer about how she felt. She felt like this is what is right for me, and this is what is right for my family. But talking with me about it, she felt like she needed to explain herself, maybe even defend her position. And number one, you should never have to explain or defend yourself or any of your decisions to anybody, especially people you've hired to give you advice, like an attorney or a doctor or a financial planner. Despite that, what I wanted to share with her was that I agreed with her. And I wanted her to know that she wasn't alone. Her idea of her adult children living with her during her 50s and perhaps even 60s is not uncommon. So I did a little bit of research and I found some numbers. And I want to share these numbers with you, and then we'll get into my story about what I'm doing with my son, who's going to turn 20 in about a week, and he still lives at home too. So we'll talk about these numbers, then we'll get into a little bit more about that client and what I'm doing with my son. So, question for you guys. When it comes to adults, adult children living with their parents, we're going to mark the age at 25 because most people that are going to college out of high school, they're done by age 25. So, let's talk about the age 25. What percentage of baby boomer 25-year-olds do you think were still living at home? We're talking about 25-year-old baby boomers. So this would have been somewhere around the 80s. Around the 80s or so is when boomers, baby boomers, were 25. So this would have been somewhere around the 80s. Baby boomers, 25 years old. What percentage of them do you think still lived at home? Because I've got the number here. And the number, it seemed to make sense. Whether that number is low or high, that really doesn't matter because we're talking about a baseline from where we can start measuring other generations. Baby boomers, 25 years old, living at home, 15%. So all of the 25-year-old people in the baby boomer generation, 15% of them lived at home at age 25. They still live with their parents. 15%. Is that number high? Is that number low? It really doesn't matter. And the reason is because now we're going to start comparing to other generations and we'll clearly see a trend. 15% of baby boomers age 25 still live at home with their parents. Next generation is Generation X. That's my generation. So I'm not quite 50. I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 in about 6 months. I'm at the tail end. I'm the younger end of the Generation X generation. So I was born about 3 years before the millennial generation started. So I'm still a Gen Xer. That's the generation that I identify with. So I'm a Gen Xer. Percentage of Gen Xers who were 25. Now, I know this. Generation X 25-year-olds, these folks are in the 90s, early 2000s. Somewhere in their late 90s, early 2000s, that's when Generation X was 25 years old. What percentage of Gen X 25-year-olds living at home? I'll give you a hint. It's higher than the boomers. It's higher than baby boomers. It's actually right at 20%. 15% of 25-year-old baby boomers were living at home, 20%. That number goes up to 20% when you come to Generation X, 25-year-old adults living at home. Next up, the millennials. This is where we see the biggest jump so far. 27% of millennial 25-year-olds living at home with their parents. 27%. That's the biggest jump from 20% Gen X, 27% millennial, 25-year-olds, boys and girls, living at home with their parents. The data did say, it did say that that trend leans toward males. More males, 25, live at home than females. So there is a bit of a shift there. But in general, if we're counting everybody, 27% of millennial 25-year-olds still living at home. And then we just have early numbers on Generation Z. Generation Z is right at 30%. That number is not entirely accurate because we still have Gen Zers that haven't turned 25 yet. So we'll have a few more years of Gen Zers reaching that age. We'll have some more data. But we've got enough here to talk. We have enough here to talk about this. Adults, 25 years old, living at home. A published U.S. Households Economic Well-Being article published that 49% of adults under the age of 30 live with a parent. In 2025, in total, 49% of adults under the age of 30 live with a parent. 49%. In 2025, this was last year. If you're under 30, that's what this says. This article here says if you're under 30, last year, 2025, if you're under 30, half of you are living at home. And that makes sense because we have larger generation. There's more Gen X than baby boomers. There's more millennial than Gen X, so on and so forth. The Generation Z is the one that they're predicting is starting to decrease, is starting to decline. But that makes it so yes, it makes sense. There's more Gen Xers and there's more millennials than generations before them. But nonetheless, that number is there. That's the number that was published. 49% last year, 2025. If you're under 30, almost half of you live at home. Is this a bad thing? Is this a bad thing that young people are living at home? I'm not going to answer that question for you, but I'm going to tell you my opinion. And the reason why I won't answer is because everyone's going to have their own opinion. You're going to line up 100 different people. You'll get half that say it's a good idea, half that say it's a bad idea, and you're going to have 100 different opinions on how and why it did happen, how and why it should, how and why it should not. You'll have a variety of different opinions. I'm talking about it here because it does affect our plans for retirement. If you are planning to retire and you're planning on no longer working at your employer and you're going to start living off of your retirement savings and you roll your 401k or your retirement savings into passive income that's going to pay your bills for what could be a retirement that lasts 30 years, 40 years maybe, this matters. Having adult children living with you matters. There's a couple of points that I want to point out here. And as I point this out, I want to talk about my son. So my son is about to turn 20 years old. He's about 1 week away from turning 20 years old. And when he does, he will be part of that statistic right there. Now, he's not 25. He's going to college, but I plan on that. I remember it was about 2 years ago. I was driving him to school and he was talking about his friends. He was talking about some plans that he was making. This was his senior year. It was the last semester of high school. And he was talking about some of his friends and what their plans were for college. He was talking about his plans on what he wanted to do. And our plan for him and his plan was I'm going to stay home and I'm going to go to a local community college for my freshman and sophomore year in college. So I'm going to get my associate's degree at a junior college. Then I'll transfer to a local university, maybe University of Houston here in the Houston area, maybe might go to Sam Houston State. That's a local 4-year university that's got campuses within driving distance of where we live. And he said, that's my intent. That's what I want to do. And I said, okay, well, I know we haven't really talked about this in depth, but just so you're aware, you're living at home until you're at least bare minimum 25, preferably closer to 30. And he said, he kind of breathed a breath of fresh air and said, okay, good, because that was my plan. In fact, he even joked that if you're going to kick me out, I'm just going to hide under the bed and live there until it's time for me until I'm comfortable to go. And we laughed about it. I said, no, you're not going anywhere. And that attitude is because I want him to be over prepared. I want him to be more than financially ready to take his steps out on his own. And I don't want him to suffer any kind of financial setback, especially one that could be prevented because he left the house too soon. So I want to avoid all that. And the way to do that is to say, son, Camden is his name. Son, you're going to stay right here and we're going to do this piece by piece. He said, great. I love the idea. Love the plan. So now he's midway. This is summer. He's midway through his sophomore year. So he's getting close to earning that associate's degree from local community college. Things are going good, and things are going to plan. A lot of clients want something like this. They want something like this as well, and they're feeling like, am I doing something wrong? Or am I doing something bad by telling my kids I want them to stay home? I want them to be here in their 20s up to age 25. Is this a bad thing? Am I ruining my kids? There are some financial experts out there that have an opinion on it. They say, oh, you're ruining your kids. They're not going to learn how to be real adults. Or they'll say something like, no, the longer they live with you as an adult, they become dependent on you. And I don't agree. I disagree with that statement. If you automatically let your kids live with you as adults, they're automatically going to be less capable adults themselves when it comes time for them to support themselves. I disagree with that statement. That's like the logic you hear sometimes where people say, well, if you're a smoker, then your kids are going to be smokers. Or if you eat unhealthily, your kids are going to eat unhealthily. Yeah, that might be true, but that's not definite. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. I remember my mother telling me stories about how her parents were smokers and their smoking habit disgusted her, my mother, when she was a kid so much that she swore she would never do it. She swore she would never smoke, and she never did through her entire life, through her adolescence, through her young adult life, and through her mature adult life, never ever smoked any tobacco, used tobacco at all. Never. Never dipped, never smoked cigars, nothing. Never did anything. Why? Because it was ingrained in her mind of how much she hated seeing her parents do it. My girlfriend now talks about it. She says my one of her parents smoked and she didn't like it, so she was deterred from it because her parents did it. So I disagree with the argument that says if parent does, so too does kid, or if parent does this, this is the automatic result that the kid has. I don't buy that at all. Does that happen sometimes? Sure, it does, but it's not the rule. That's not the rule of law of what happens. There are plenty of instances where people live at home until age 25, 27, maybe even 30, and have a wildly successful adult life. And I would argue that their living at home during their 20s helped put them in that position. So when I talked about it with Camden, I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to live at home. And the reason why you're going to live at home is because I don't want you to have the pressure that I had when I was your age. So, for those of you who don't know, when I was my son's age, when I was 19, I became a father. And my girlfriend and I, at the time when we became pregnant, it was it was it was surprising and it was sobering. Not that we were drunk, but it was we had the realization of we have to grow up now. We have to do this. And so at 19 years old, and my girlfriend at the time was 18, she was basically same age. And now we have this little baby to care for, to keep alive, and to nurture. And for a 19-year-old, that's a lot. That's a lot of responsibility, especially for the males, because as men, society says, hey, not only do you have to take care of your kid, you have to take care of that woman too. You're responsible. You are responsible for everything that happens in your family. So even added pressure. Being a 19-year-old mother is one thing. Being a 19-year-old father is something entirely different. Not better, not worse, just different. And that pressure that's there to have to provide for your family, I don't want my son experiencing that. Not yet. I mean, maybe down the road in his 20s or 30s, sure. At 19, no, not that. I know what that feels like, and I know how my life changed because of it. And yeah, there's a lot of ways you could say, well, if you behave a certain way with with your partner, then you won't get pregnant. Yeah, no, I understand. All I'm saying is that along with that, there's other stuff, such as moving out. One of my clients said, "Hey, look at this." And what she showed was a post on Facebook from her friend. The friend said, and the post was, "Here's my son. He's 18 years old. He's moving into his own apartment. He needs a couch. Does anybody in this group have a sofa that he could buy for cheap?" Well, of course, there's usually one or two that says, "Hey, I've got a sofa that he can have for free. It's in storage, but he can have it if he can pick it up." And there's a picture of this post of this kid, young kid, 18 years old, thumbs up in front of his apartment. And I'm looking at it, and my client showing it to me. It's one of her connections on social media. It says, "Look, I don't want that. I don't want my kids. I don't want this to be my kid. I want my kids staying home because that is in their financial best interest, and it's in my financial best interest, hers." Because she says, by keeping my kids out of financial trouble, now I don't have to come to the rescue 2 or 3 years down the road. I said, I completely understand. But what that shows is the different mentalities there are. And what struck me on that Facebook post was one of the comments said, "Good mama. You're a good mama." And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I'm not saying she's a bad mama. I'm not saying that at all because there are a lot of good mothers out there with kids out there on their own. I'm just saying, for me, I don't want my son having to wrestle with that responsibility if there's a way for him to not. So he's going to live at home. So what does that look like? What does that look like when our kids live at home? Because it's different for virtually everybody. There's very similar, very different. It's unlikely that two households with adult kids living at home look exactly the same. But I can share with you a picture of what mine looks like. So my son, he goes to school. He has his own car. I give him the car. This was a car that I drove and I kept around, and it's a Corolla, and I give it to him to drive because it's a reliable car. It's a car that, if well maintained, it'll last forever. If moderately maintained, it'll still last a long time. And it has. And so he drives it. I think it's got about almost 200,000 miles on it now. I want to say it's a 9 or 10 year old model, but still great. So he drives that. He drives to and from school. He has a job. I don't know if you remember on the last episode of the Money by Chris podcast, we talked about his job. He just qualified for his 401k plan. He's excited about putting money in his 401k. And all of that stems from him not having the expense of living on his own. The fact that he can put money into his 401k and start to build his savings and start to collect that company match is because he doesn't have big bills. He doesn't have rent to pay. So that's where people ask me, okay, Chris, son's living at home. Is he paying rent? For me, the answer is no. He's not paying rent. But that's me. I don't need him to pay rent. I'd rather him save that money. For some of you, that this is the point. This is one point of idea that some people have. Can your adult kids help you get to the retirement you're looking for? Is that possible? And one answer is, I think so. I think so because when you have adult kids, they typically have a means of income. They have a job somehow, some way. It's okay if it's better for your family to charge them rent for living there. It's perfectly okay. I have some friends who are charging their adult children some rent to live it at home. So they became 18, they became 20 years old. Maybe they're going to school, maybe they're not. Maybe they're learning from the family business or working in the family business. I know some people who are in their mid 30s still living at home. It's a little more of a financial dynamic there. They're doing that because if I'm going to pay rent someplace else, I don't own a home. I'm going to pay something. I may as well pay that to mom or grandma. So let me pay that and I'll live here. Perfectly understandable. I would do the same thing. I would, if I were 30 or 40 living at home, I would, yeah, here's some money for rent, here's some money for something. I would do that too. So sometimes having an adult child living at home can be a financial benefit to you, and they can actually help you get to the financial goal that you're looking to get to. I also see it on the flip side. I see it on the flip side as well as far as aging parents. I've had some clients who have parents who've said, well, I was going to live in this house, and when I pass away, I was going to leave the house to my kids. Well, dad passed away, mom has survived. She's in this house, she doesn't want to maintain it. And so, what if I sell this house, give that money to my kids somehow, or put it in a trust somewhere for my kids when I die, and I'll go live with the kids? That's so common nowadays that there are home builders that are building mother-in-law suites. They're called next gen homes, next generation homes. It's becoming so common that mom or mother-in-law moves in with the kids that they actually are building home floor plans that have a separate domicile attached to the home. It's got a separate living room, it's got a separate bedroom, it's got a separate kitchen, it's got separate bathroom. It's like a little apartment attached to the main home, but it's called the next gen home. It's even got its own entrance. It's basically its own one bedroom dwelling unit, but it's attached to the house. It uses the same AC unit, uses the same water supply, all that stuff. That's how common that is. This is the other side of that. This is the part where we say, okay, we're going to let our kids live with us a little bit longer so they have a better footprint, financial footprint. So what does that financial footprint look like? What I do with my son is when we set up his pay, I said, all right, so we taught him about money and we got him a credit card. And when he was 16, 17, I put him on one of my credit cards and I gave him a limit. I said, here's your credit card. If you're out, you want to buy something or whatever, you can use that credit card. These days, kids use Apple Pay. So I put that credit card on Apple Pay. There's Apple Pay. If you need to go, if you're out somewhere and you need to use the money, there's Apple Pay. Well, now he's an adult and now he has his own credit card that's I'm not tied to. And so now that has become the Apple Pay. So now his credit card is on Apple Pay, but he still has mine. The Citi card that I gave him, he still has mine. And basically I said, hey, Candid, if you need to buy something and I'm going to pay for it, use the Citi card. If you're paying for it, use your Capital One. So he knows, so that's how he keeps it separate. But it didn't start out that way. It started out with use the Citi card because I'm paying that full bill. But when he became an adult, right when he turned 18, that's when we said, all right, now you're going to get your own credit card and you're going to manage that. And part of that is with employment. You have to make money. So you have to get a job and use that money. When you get that paycheck, 40% automatically is going to go into savings. And then once that savings hits $1,000, transfer it into your brokerage account, put that money in the S&P so it grows. So that's that division. 40% pay, boom, savings. And once it hits four figures, boom, into the brokerage account, put it in the S&P. So that means 60% of his paycheck that he gets, that's for him to use. That's for him to manage, pay bills, budget. What do I have? What can I spend? And I told him that the operations are whatever you spend on anything, use your credit card and live within the budget of that 60% that comes in every month. Whatever that dollar amount is, that's your spend money. That's what you can have. It doesn't mean you have to spend it, but that's what your limit is if you're doing something special. So go buy whatever you're going to buy on the credit card at the end of the month. Use your checking account money, pay the credit card off. Whatever's left over, maybe dump that into savings too. If you have any left over, just leave it if you've got something you're planning for next month. But the 40% that's in savings, don't touch it. So 40% brokerage account, S&P, that money grows. The goal there is that if he can get to a point of having 25,000, $25,000 in his brokerage account growing with the S&P, that's a foundation where I feel he'll be okay, he'll be in good shape. At that point, he'll be in a position to perhaps buy a home, after he graduates. After he graduates from college is when he'll get a job, probably somewhere in the $60,000 to $100,000 salary range. If he's got that, plus he's got good credit, plus he's got 25,000 saved up, now his ability to go buy a home that he might want to move into, now that's there. He's got the credit score that he needs, he's got the income that he needs, and he's got the down payment money that he needs. Now he never has to move into an apartment. He's going to go into a home that he purchases, preferably one in a decent neighborhood, preferably one that's near where he works or near me, but most importantly, one that he can afford. I don't want him going into an apartment just to say he lives on his own. The only way for him to be able to build wealth, the only way for our kids to be able to build wealth is if they go from living at home into another place that they're owning, that they become owners of. Some parents buy a home for their kids. That's okay. Some parents say the kids got to buy their own home. Okay, that's fine too. But I prefer to make sure that my son has everything he needs to buy that home. And that's what some of my clients feel like too. They see that plan and they say, Chris, I like that plan. That's a good plan. How you're tiering it. Everything's been tiered and set up in a way that does that because a lot of our clients don't know how to do that. A lot of people don't know how to do that. Well, what are the steps? What steps do I follow so that the longer my son lives with me or the longer my kids live with me, the more financial strength they have? That's how. Live at home, don't pay rent, go to work, 40% into a brokerage account, put it in the S&P, let it grow every month or whenever that savings hits four figures, $1,000, transfer into your self-directed account. Don't pay fees, there's no need. Put that money in the S&P, let it grow. That's it. Now, my son says, Dad, 401k. So I'm like, there we go. Do you get a match? Yes, I do. Dollar for dollar up to 5%. Okay. If you're getting a match, dollar for dollar up to 5%, then do it. But I had to tell him, your brokerage account money, that you can use whenever you want. That's non-qualified liquid money. You can go in there and grab some if you needed it. But this 401k money, that you can't touch. That once it's in there, you can't touch it until you're 59 and a half. So just remember that. Whatever you're putting in there, yes, it's good to watch it grow, but you can't in a pinch go in there and grab it. You can your brokerage account. So just beware. So all that's happening, but the reason why that can happen is because he doesn't have bills, not big ones. He doesn't have to pay rent. That's how I have it set up. And there are a lot of people, when I talk about that setup, they like that idea. They say, I'd like something similar. I want to set something up that's similar to that. Not everybody. Some people say, I don't want my kids working. I want my kids living off of legacy money that is created by me to give to them. Okay. There's ways to do that too. There's ways to set up guaranteed income streams, passive income streams, not just for you in retirement, but for your kids too. We can put that together as well. But everyone's different. And a lot of people are looking at this with some shame. They say, I don't want to be looked at weird for letting my kids live at home. There was an article that was on LinkedIn just last week talking about this, saying adult kids living at home is no longer a negative stigma. No longer is it looked on as a failure. No longer is the kid considered a loser for being 25 years old and living at home. Now it's considered smart. And I'm thinking, duh, of course it's considered smart. Only the idea that someone is less than because they still live at home, I feel like is a foolish assumption. Because let's look at it. In the American culture, that's the way it was. Here in the US, 15% of boomers age 25 lived at home, then 20% of Gen X, then 27% of millennial, now almost 30% of Gen Z. So it's moving up. There was a time when it was looked at as you're lazy or you're a loser if you live at home at age 25. But that's in America. Other cultures don't do that. In other cultures, you see young adults, middle-aged adults, and elderly adults typically all living together. That's what you see in South American cultures, Central and South American cultures. That's what you see in Asian cultures. That's what you see in Indian cultures and African cultures. I went to Europe last year. I went to Italy. There's Italian families that do it. European cultures do it as well. Russian cultures even, they do it. It's not considered weird for young adults, middle-aged adults, and elderly adults living, in some cases, even the same house. So why is it considered not taboo, but why is it considered a weirdness or a failure to launch if an American family does that? I want to push back on it. I say that more American families should embrace it. And I'm not just telling people what they should do. I'm doing the same thing. I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid. My son is going to live with me. And if Nancy and I are destined to be married, let's say, then I'm going to consider that, or whomever, I'm going to consider that as this is an idea that should be considered. I'm not saying what's right for you. I'm not saying that that's what you should do because every family dynamic is different. But I certainly want, if at all possible, to make that happen. Now, of course, the kids they get a vote too. Once they become adults, they get a say so as well. And they say, no, I want to do my own thing. And understand that once you're an adult, you have that idea of that this could go different. Uh, but I'm thinking that's what I would want to see. I would want to see that happen for my kids. So that's what our plan is. My plan is for my son to live with me for at least another 5 years, definitely until he's out of college. Maybe he'll want to work with me, helping people roll their 401ks over just like I do, or maybe he wants to do something else. He's mentioned accounting. He might even choose a completely different industry. Either way, he's going to have the foundation here built up under him to be able to do that. And the only way we can do it is by letting him live at home a little bit longer. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section of this video here, whether you're listening on Spotify or if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are. If you're watching a recording of this, um, if you don't have a comment or whatever, if you don't want to do the comment thing, you can also send me an email. My email address is chris@retrieverfinancial.com. Send me an email about this, about my 25-year-olds living with me, and let me know what your thoughts are. The more information I get from people, from clients, and from listeners and from followers just like you, the more I can touch on this. There are a lot of dynamics involved. Sometimes you have kids who don't want to live with their parents for a variety of reasons. Sometimes you have parents that don't want the kids living with them. Sometimes, and I remember hearing one time when I was younger, I remember hearing from a specific person. She said, once you're 18, you're out. And she didn't like me very much. So, and of course, we don't want to feel like we're not wanted. And I most certainly don't want to be around anyone who doesn't want me to be around. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What if, for one reason or another, what if the adult kid doesn't want to live at home or you don't want the adult kid to live there? So if you're a young person listening to this, or if you know someone who is young and listening to this, here's some ideas. People, even back when baby boomers, even back with the baby boomer generation, living together with roommates was an option. In fact, one of my favorite shows ever when I was a kid from the 70s, I think it started in 1976 or 77, right when I was born. And it was one of my favorite shows as a kid was Three's Company. And Three's Company is one of those shows where you had adults who were essentially strangers and they lived together. These aren't family members. Janet and Chrissy weren't sisters. Jack was, at the start of the episode, he was just basically homeless. And then he wound up staying and got invited to live with them. So it was three people, none of them family, living in the same apartment. Of course, there's plenty of hijinks and it's a funny show. So catch up with it on your favorite streaming device to have a nice chuckle there on in your downtime at night or on the weekend. But that show was in the 70s. That was a baby boomer show talking about living together with non-family members. So it happened. You also have a variety of family shows. Eight is Enough was a common show where people were living at home. Happy Days was another one where you have shows. These are older shows. These are baby boomer shows talking about adult kids living at home or in the basement. Brady Bunch, even. I think when Greg, I think he was the oldest boy, later in the show got to the point where he became an adult. Did he leave home? Nope. He moved into the attic. He's an adult living, still living at home, moved into the attic. So these are baby boomer shows from back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s talking about or showing, depicting a lifestyle of living with strangers or living at home as an adult with your parents. It's not a taboo thing. It really isn't. And I never want to treat it that way, but there are options. So if you can't live at home, or if you don't want to live at home, there are ways for you to get that done. And one of them is living with other people. Naturally, the more stable the other party is, the better. One time, I remember when I was younger, I was living with a married couple who were renting a room out of their house. And I wasn't owning, I did have to pay rent, but it was not unlike me living at home. If I were living at home and mom or dad were charging me a few $100s a month for rent, that's what I paid there. So I was living in their home. They owned the home. They had this room they were renting out, and I paid, I think, 300 or 400 bucks a month to live there. And I stayed there for, I think, a year and a half before I finally got my own place. But that's an example of what can happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. The idea there is that when you do that when you're in your younger years, it's to help build that foundation so you can launch. That foundation is a pile of money. And one way to build that is if you have the means, find the way to live within about 60% of your means so that 40% can go and start building your wealth. And one easy way to do that is home ownership. So if you can keep your bills nice and low or stay living with your parents until you have enough money to be able to comfortably purchase a home, now building wealth is much, much easier two things, when you own a home and when you live in it. To do that takes time. 25, 26, 27, maybe until that happens. And until then, until my son gets to a very comfortable state of being able to do it, he's going to live right here with dad. That's my approach. That's my attitude toward that. Let me know what your thoughts are because I do want to get your feedback on this 25-year-old children living at home. Now, I do have some people who are asking, okay, what is it? What more does it look like? They ask me, what else? They want to peer even deeper into that dynamic. Are you cleaning for him? Are you cooking dinner for him? Are you doing his laundry? Things that you would do for a 15-year-old. Are you still doing that for a 20-year-old? They want to know. And a lot of times, parents and clients, when I talk to them, they're looking for some assistance and maybe some guidance because it can be tricky as we raise children. They need us less and less as they grow older. When they're babies, and we just bring them home from the hospital, they're completely dependent. We have to spoon feed them, we have to change them and bathe them and dress them all the time. And then they grow a little bit. Now we don't have to feed them. We don't have to spoon feed them anymore. They can feed themselves. And then eventually they can dress themselves. They can bathe themselves. They can go to the bathroom by themselves. And so they get to that point. Well, sometimes it can be difficult to continue that, getting them to do their own laundry, getting them to cook their own food. I know one mother who says, "I don't want my son touching the stove or the oven at all." And I said, "Well, what if he wants to make himself a snack or make himself dinner? What if you're out? Or what? What? No, no, no. I don't want him touching it. I understand the fear. I understand the fear of that hump, getting over that hump of having them do some of that stuff. Resist the urge to resist the urge to pull back on the reins too much. I don't want my son. My big fear of my son using the stove or using the oven was burning himself. I just didn't want him to hurt. I didn't fear him burning down the house. There's plenty of safety features. He knows how to use fire extinguishers. That's all that stuff. But my fear was him burning himself, like him touching something or dropping something and burning himself. So just showing him how to use stuff. Here's how to light the burner. Here's where the pots holders are. Here's what to touch and not to touch. Just they'll pick it up, especially the oven thing. And it's been very helpful because there have been times when I've been out doing something or I'm not home in time and he's, Dad, I'll take care of it. At 20 years old, he he can do his own laundry, but he really stinks at it. I love him so much, but he's just not good at laundry. And the problem with it, with him doing his own laundry, is he packs the washing machine so full. There's like just jam. He doesn't know when to stop. He just put it all in there. What should be three loads, four loads, he crams into one. One time he crammed the washing machine so full, I don't think all the clothes got wet. That's how full it was. And I'm pulling it out and I'm like, this wad of shirt was, I don't think this even got water on it, much less soap. Let's start over. So I pull everything out and then started over with a reasonable size load. And I think it took me like three laundry loads, one and then the second, and then the third, to finally get all of what he thought was one load washed. So he's not that great at the laundry thing, but he's done it before. He's learning, and he'll wash a small load. I'll fold them. I'll dry, fold the clothes. He'll put them away. So he does that. I do make food for the family. I'll make dinner for the family, but there are plenty of times where he does. I don't buy food for him all the time. I do have one rule. I say no DoorDash, no DoorDash, no food delivery. It's a ridiculous expense that doesn't need to be there. So let's either buy groceries and make food inside the house, or if you insist on dining out, which is what that is, go and at very minimum, go pick it up. And that's even back before delivery services, before food delivery services, when the only thing you could get delivered to your home was pizza. I would say order the pizza, use the app, and then go pick it up because you'll save the delivery fee, which is $3 or $4. You'll save the tip, which is $5. So automatically, the same exact pizza that you're ordering, you're spending $8 less by just going three-quarters of a mile down the street and picking it up yourself. So that's a rule that we have there. But as far as food, he'll go to the grocery store and he'll buy food. He'll buy Totino's oven baked pizzas, and he'll buy corn dogs, and he'll buy hamburger patties and make some hamburgers, and he'll buy chicken nuggets and stuff. And so he'll buy processed foods and packaged foods like that. Bit by bit, I'm teaching him how to make other food, which takes more time. But every single pile of food, every single plate, he'll ask, how much was this? How much did this cost? And I'll do the math and I'll say, this plate of food was $6 to make, to purchase everything to make that you see on the plate, $6 or $4.80 or something like that. If it's steak, it's more like $8 or so. Wow. He's comparing it to what he would spend if he were out somewhere. I think, wow, that's really good. It is. You just got to do it. You have to go buy the food, then you have to bring it home, and then you have to go through the labor of making the food. And then after you make the food, you got to clean all the dishes. So he'll do the dishes. When living here, he'll buy some food. He'll make some of his own food. He does a pretty good job of doing the dishes. We split dish work. I don't mind doing dishes. I don't mind doing laundry. So, but he will split it. He'll he'll put the dishes in the dishwasher. Kids these days have it real good because you don't even really have to wash the dishes. All you have to do is put it in the dishwasher, put a soap packet in there, and let her rip. So those are easy. He'll do that. He'll do some laundry, but I prefer to do it because I make sure it gets done right. I'll fold the clothes. He'll and put them in the basket. He'll take it into his upstairs area and put all the clothes away. I will buy food. I'll make food that I bought, but he'll also buy his own food. He'll buy his own stuff. He'll buy his own orange juice from time to time, stuff that he wants. So there's a kind of a co-op. There's not a definitive line, but there's a co-op of I buy some food, he buys some food, works out. Kind of a mid thing. There are some times I'll take him out to lunch, especially in the summer if he's not going to school. Summer or winter break, spring break, I'll take him out to lunch. I'll buy because usually when he's in school, he's providing his own lunch because either class has just ended, now he's about to go eat somewhere with his friends, or he's working a shift. Typically, his shifts are morning. They'll stretch from 8 or 9 a.m. until 1 or 2 or even 3 in the afternoon. So typically, right after work, he's hungry because he hasn't eaten. It's a straight shift. So he feeds himself lunch frequently, but sometimes I'll take him too if he's not working and he doesn't have school. Car maintenance. So I pay for his insurance, but he buys his own gas and he pays for his own oil changes when it's time to get oil change. He'll check on the maintenance as well. He'll say, "Hey, Dad, maintenance lights on. What should I do?" And he'll check. We'll co-op with that. So again, I don't want him shouldering too big of an expense, and I know that's going to pay off big time for me later because the more I invest in him at 20 and 21 and 22 and 23, the less he's going to depend on me later. So my argument for the people who say if you let your kids live with you, you'll ruin them, I don't think so. I think if you let your adult kids live with you until age 25 or even 30, you're preparing them better for a successful, more confident, more stable adult down the road. So I see these numbers going up. I think it's a good thing. I think the numbers should continue to go up. I think that we should normalize letting our kids live with us well into their 20s, maybe even into their 30s, depending on your living situation. Because here's what I know. I might want to come live with him when I'm 70. When I'm 70 or 80, I might want to come live with him. So, return the favor. Call it depositing into that account that I plan on withdrawing from later. Maybe one of my retirement plans is taking good care of Camden so that I can come live with him when that time comes. All that to say is that when it comes to our kids living with us, it's certainly not a bad thing. Certainly not a thing that you should feel ashamed about. And if somebody does have a negative thing to say about it, who cares? They don't they don't have any skin in the game. This is your family. This is your financial plan. This is your parenting of your kids. You handle it the best way you see fit. And that means your kids living with you. Not only are you not going to get any judgment from this end, you're going to get some nods of approval and some support because that's a smart family. You get kids staying at home. That's a smart family. That's what Central American and South American families do with success. That's what Asian families do and Indian families do with success. That's what European families do, and they're successful doing it. African families and Russian families, they do that, and they're successful at doing it. And I would argue they're more well-rounded people because they're around family. They're around people that love them. Not saying people who are loners aren't successful. That's certainly not what I'm saying. I'm an introvert myself. I do like my alone time, but I will say that the more I'm around people that matter, the more I'm around the right people, the better and more fulfilled I feel. So that's certainly nothing wrong with that. That's all I've got for this episode, and I hope you found some enlightened words or some enlightened ideas from it. There is a way for you to keep your kids living at home and prepare them better, benefit from it yourself, and perhaps set yourself up for an even better looking retirement down the road. I help people roll their 401k into passive income streams, but not all of it's needed. They might have $1 million in their 401k. They roll six or 700,000 into a passive income stream. The rest of it, they might do something different with it. Maybe even build an addition to their house to help with more family moving in. Some people that I know are selling their house in the city and buying land a couple dozen miles outside of the city and creating a compound where it's them, and then they build a separate structure for their for another family member. We see that sometimes too. Doesn't have to be huge, but there's plenty of land out there to be able to do something like that with. I've also seen some people who say, "What? I own my house and I'm married and we're in our 70s and kids are grown and gone, and I don't want to own a home anymore. I want to sell my home and I want to take my proceeds and I want to roll it into a passive income stream. And then I'm going to go live at the 55 plus retirement community that's brand new and beautiful and well maintained. And there's somebody there to take care of everything. And I can lock my rent in for a 15-year lease." I've seen that too, and people are blissfully happy doing it that way. So there's a wide variety of things people can do in retirement, and all you need is an income stream to put that together. That's what I specialize in, taking your 401k or your brokerage account, maybe even proceeds from your home sale, and rolling that into passive income streams that pay you income without you having to lift a finger for the rest of your life, which could be 30 years. You retire at 60, live to 90. Retire at 65, live to 95, maybe even longer. With modern medicine, who knows how long we're going to be living? And having passive income streams into retirement helps us retire comfortably and with ease. Next episode, we will be talking about something cool. I don't even know what. I don't have my list up yet, but I think what we're going to talk about next time is passive income versus guaranteed income. There is a difference. And when you stop work, the working income is when you go to work, do a job, and get paid for it. Passive income, we know what that is. That's doing a little bit of work and getting paid while you sleep. So passive income, that's what people are looking for in retirement, but there is a third style. There's a guaranteed level of income. We're going to talk about the differences between passive income and guaranteed income on our next episode. So thank you for your time and your attention. I hope you enjoyed this, maybe on your ride home or maybe while you're working out, or if you're like some people I know, maybe you're listening to this while you're cooking food in the kitchen. Hopefully you found some good insight, some good information with it. If you have any questions based on what you've heard on this episode, you can check the comments, go down in the comments section of whatever platform you're watching this on. Let me know in the comments. We monitor those so that we can answer your questions. If you want to ask something direct, you can send me an email to Chris, CHRIS, at retrieverfinancial.com. That's my agency. That's my email address. Shoot me an email, ask the question, and we'll get that answered for you promptly. Otherwise, have a great week. Have a great weekend. We will see you next time on the Money by Chris podcast. And I don't have a catchphrase yet. I really want one. That right there is where I would normally say, and for goodness sake, something, 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 or whatever. I don't have a catchphrase yet, but I'm going to work on it. I'm going to get a catchphrase. Next episode, when I sign off, there's going to be a catchphrase and you're going to love it. I might even sample a couple. I might even try a couple different catchphrases to see which one sticks best, but no catchphrase yet. So just insert catchy catchphrase here, and we'll see you next time on the Money by Chris podcast.